I promised you to show you my process of capturing impulse responses inside of Bitwig Studio. It's not an easy process, not everyone knows how to do it, and I want to show you this basically in this video, how I do it. It's maybe not the perfect way of doing it, but it's how I do it. So inside of Bitwig here, we have this nice little test tone device. It looks like this. It generates sine waves. You can change the loudness here and the frequency. We can change here the source from sine to Dirac. Sounds like this. When we pull down the frequency here, we get nice little simple impulses. Gain 100%. It's exactly what we want to capture here. So I just bounce this. Select here portion, say bounce. Post fader, 32-bit floating point, no dither. Okay. And we have here a lot of pulses actually captured inside of this wave file. So we take this wave file here from the project and drag it into our audio editor. And we just want to single out your one pulse. You can see here it starts with some ripples at the beginning, and then you have the main pulse, and then it ripples slowly out. I think you want to keep the ripples in. I think this is fine. This is pretty short here. It's just a portion of a millisecond. So we export this to a wave file here. Export and call it maybe Dirac1. Go back to Bitwig here. We delete this and use a sampler. You can see I have already a preset for this, right? Because sometimes people ask me in the comments, why do you don't just use presets, right? So if I just use presets or only use presets, you never see what I'm actually doing. And that's the purpose of these videos, that I show you my process. So I'm using a sampler. We don't need here the modulators, the default ones. And we just drag in here the sample Dirac1 into here. We disable key tracking because we want to keep the pitch, and we want to disable here the velocity sensitivity. Voice gain is 0 dB and output is also 0 dB. Sustain is all the way up. That's what we need. Now we can trigger this with the keyboard. And we want to use here a supermassive reverb, because we want to sample actually or capture the essence of the supermassive. So we use here a preset, let's say Leo Maximalism. The mix is also 100%. I do this all the time when I capture reverbs. I use with the mix 100% because I want to dial the dry and wet signal then on the convolution itself, not in the ER response. So here it's 100%. Now I create here a note clip, create some kind of note trigger here. And then I think the maximum length of an impulse response in Bitwig Studio is 25 seconds. So this would be, let's say, you can see this here, the top would be here, around here. Something like this. You don't need to actually capture 25 seconds. I just want to show you how long you can capture. You can also capture just short. Right click, bounce, post fader, 32-bit, no dither, bounce. So now in here we have basically content. It's just quiet. Can't see it. But now we create here a synth to test this. So open up the filter here and use a convolution device here. And now we can drag this file here, Dirac1, bounce1. We can drag this into here. And that's basically all you need. Now we can test this. I hope you can hear it. Okay, so sounds good. It's a stereo file. You can see 2 channels here. It's 21.82 seconds long. which is okay. So now there are some things you need to know. First, it's a convolution reverb, so it's a sample. So every time you send a sound into the convolution reverb, you get this kind of the same reverb because it's just a sample, right? It's just a sample played back, multiplied with the input signal. So it's not sounding very alive. It's a bit static, right? So usually convolution reverbs are mixed up with some algorithmic reverbs because algorithmic reverbs react to the sound. So different frequencies, different strength or audio modulations, and it sounds a bit more alive and different, right? So you usually want to use here something like this, the main reverb of Bitwig Studio, or you want to use after that, let's say delay plus here. With this diffusion network here called space. And then you can bring in here a bit of modulation. Let's say you put in a random mod here. Hertz. Then just modulate this. So we have a bit of pitch modulation in there. Okay, so when you mix it up with the algorithmic reverb, then you can actually shorten this sample by a tremendous amount. I think it's not really CPU friendly when you have longer impulse responses, so it takes more CPU power from your project. So I see it like this way. This impulse response is more like an Instagram filter, right? It's not like the real vintage camera. So when you take a photograph inside of Instagram, you put a filter on it and it kind of looks like an old vintage camera, but it's not like a real vintage camera. It doesn't react to light differently, right? And it has a lot of different features, but it's more like, you know, you put some spice on top of your photo, but it's not like the real thing. It's the same with the impulse response. It doesn't react like a real reverb to input sounds. So it's more like it captures the flavor of the supermassive in this case here. So when it's only there to capture basically the flavor, then you can shorten this here a lot. And then use an algorithmic reverb to make this longer, right? So we capture basically the essence and the sound and the flavor of the reverb in a short impulse response. And then we use an algorithmic reverb to make this longer and diffuse over a longer amount of time. So what we can do now is basically to use here the editor and just drag this into the editor here. And say, can I zoom in here? Yeah, I can zoom in. It doesn't change the volume, it's just a zoom in. So we can say, I want to shorten this here by this amount, right? Delete everything in here. And say, just shorten this and then use maybe this portion here and say, I want to fade it out. Maybe you can make it even shorter. Say this amount. Effects, fade out. Okay, so now that we have this, we can also export this, of course, WAV file, and give it a real name. You can say this is supermassive maximalism wave. Okay, boom. So in here we can then use this file. And it's just 5 seconds now here with a nice fade out. So on its own, it's actually not long. It fades out pretty quickly, but the essence or the sound or the flavor of Supermassive, of this algorithm and of this preset is still in here. But then we use this basically with the delay plus to make it longer. So this is how I use it most of the time. So it's more like a diffusion algorithm on top of a delay. I think you can also just use a delay here. delay 2. So this is the diffusion here, and this is basically to make it longer. Or put this actually in the bed FX, also possible. It doesn't sound like a delay, right? Or an echo. It sounds like a reverb, because this is diffusing everything between the tabs, between the delay tabs. It's maybe not sounding like the original preset of the Supermassive, but it gets, you know, you captured basically the feel of it, and you made your own reverb out of it. And when you load up here the reverb, or at least if you load up my reverb, by default, I have here inside of the reverb, I have already here a convolution inside of the tank FX for the diffusion and the delay plus. So this is also possible to combine this here with the normal reverb of Bitwig Studio. So yeah, this is basically how I capture stuff. You can also capture different reverbs, or maybe combine the Supermassive with something else, right? Or just capture different reverbs, or maybe some things like, yeah, you can also capture, of course, rhythmic stuff, right? I can show you this here. So let's say you make a track and you know exactly the track is 120 BPM long. So you create something like, let's say, test tone, and you switch this here to a white noise, right? And then you put here maybe something rhythmic on it. Let's say, what's the name? Curves. Put this to bar here. Unipolar. Then you draw in here some stuff, something like this. Let's go to 8. Maybe 6 here. Something like this. And we make this curve here a bit steeper. And then we use this on the gain. You get this kind of rhythmic stuff. Maybe we want to put a pen on it. I don't know. Let's say delay 2. Something like this. So you can sample this. Bounce it out. Post fader, no dither, 32-bit. And you get this kind of stuff here. And the rhythmic is exactly, or it fits perfect 120 BPM, right? That's important. So you can go here into instrument track, call up the convolution, and put this one here, test tone bounce 2 in here. You can see it's rhythmic, right? Now it sounds like this. It's just one note. It's maybe a bit long, so you can keep this short. Maybe we don't need to bounce this long, right? You just need a few taps here. And because this is 120 BPM, you can use it perfectly fine inside of your 120 BPM track. It fits perfectly in. You don't need to correct anything, right? Then there's something like when you want to use convolution here. A lot of people actually don't know this. You have here some presets in here, right? Some categories. And you can see I have a lot of different categories in here with stuff I added myself. And this kind of works like this, that you have to right click here on an empty space in here and go for import impulses, right? Do this, and then you can select some kind of folder on your hard drive. And I have here impulse responses folder, and this one is called polarity IR pack. And I select this, and then I use use this folder, right? I can do this here. And what it does now is it moves all these files, all these WAV files into the Bitwig library. That's where you define basically your library directory, and moves it over into this directory and converts every file to an impulse response, to a Bitwig impulse response, and creates these nice little things here. And every folder you just saw in here, right, these ones here, become categories on the left side. If you use subfolders in here, subfolders are also flattened to new folders in here, so you can't use a hierarchy or something like this. You need basically just one level of subfolders, and then every folder in here becomes kind of a category in here. So this is how it works. And if you add something new, a new impulse response to your original file directory here, or subdirectories, then you have to do the whole import process again. And it will overwrite basically the old files and then add the new files. So this is how this works. So the important part is basically that you have to use here right click and then import impulses here. And then you get this. You can see here, this one is basically here. I recorded in my street with the iPhone, just clapping my hands and then record the impulse. Yeah, that's what I did. This is actually a stereo file. Yeah. It's pretty short. Yeah, this is how I capture basically stuff inside of Bitwig Studio with a direct sample, with some editing, and then combining everything with a algorithmic reverb. And in real life, I just use my hands. I clap, and then record with my iPhone, and then capture the feel or the essence of the room or my environment. So this is how it works. This is how I capture impulse responses, and I thought maybe it's a good idea to show you this. Okay, so thanks for watching. Leave a like if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel. If you have some questions, please leave it in the comments below. I try to answer them as quick as possible. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, probably tomorrow. Bye.